Well, I see by my clock now that it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we use everyone's time wisely. My name is Danielle Frechette, and I'm a biologist with the Maine Department of Marine Resources, and I'm the point of contact for the Spawning Smelt survey for the Community Science program. And I want to welcome you this afternoon to our 2022 spring training. If you have friends who are interested in the training or interested in the survey, but are not able to participate in the training, we are recording today's session, and that recording will be available in a couple of days following our session today. So without further ado, I wanted to give you a little bit of an orientation to the species that we're looking at right now, and that is the rainbow smelt. They are one of our 12 sea-run or diagamous species here in Maine. And they're our smallest sea-run species, and they're a really neat little fish. They're around 7 to 9 inches long, but they don't get to be much bigger than about a foot long here in Maine. They're a beautiful dark blue-green with silver sides. They have a very slender body, a pointed head, and a deeply forked tail. And one of my favorite fun facts about smelt is that they really love cold water. They make both an antifreeze protein and glycerol within their bodies that not only helps improve their swimming speed and muscle function, it actually keeps their bodies from freezing when water temperatures are even below 0. Rainbow smelt spawn at night during the springtime. The timing itself will depend on water temperature and where you are along the coastline. They generally start spawning at around 40 degrees Fahrenheit with a peak at about 50 degrees. And they spawn at or above the head of tide in brackish to fresh water. Smelt are what we call broadcast spawners, so they release their eggs and sperm into the water column. The males may spawn more than once per season. They may even spawn in adjacent streams. The females generally only spawn once per season, and they have these eggs, very sticky eggs that sink to the bottom and adhere to the rocks in the stream bed. And so what you're seeing here in this image on the right is a very dense egg bed in a Downeast Maine river. So all of this white stuff that you're seeing on the stream bed around the rocks, those are all smelt eggs that have adhered to the stream bed. Another fun fact is that bigger females lay more eggs. So a 2-year-old fish might lay around 30,000 eggs, but a 3-year-old female will lay more than twice that. So these egg beds, when smelt are abundant, can become very dense and highly visible. The eggs will hatch after 7 to 21 days, depending on the water temperature. The larvae then get transported downstream by the flow into the tidal zone where they feed on zooplankton. So what is the Spring Spawning Survey? This is a survey that's designed to help us document smelt spawning in our coastal streams and rivers here in Maine. And what we're looking for is spawning run strength. How well are these spawning populations doing? And we look at that by estimating the density of egg mats. How big are those egg mats? How thick are they? Basically, how many eggs? And how many adults are spawning in our streams. We also use this effort to collect information on the spawning habitat itself. So we look at what is the substrate that the fish are using? Is it high quality? We also look at any obstructions to passage that might prevent those smelt from getting upstream. And this survey actually started out in the early 1970s as an effort by the Maine Department of Marine Resources. There was an effort in the early 80s led by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Maine DMR and our Marine Patrol picked the survey back up in 2005 and surveyed again in 2007 to 2009. And then in 2014, the Downeast Salmon Federation worked with DMR to take the survey protocol and make it accessible to really everyone, and launched a citizen science effort in the Downeast region, so largely Washington and Hancock counties, from 2014 to 2019. In 2020, at the start of the pandemic, we launched the coastwide community science survey. And this is really the same survey protocol that's been carried out since the 70s, slightly modified. And this is an effort between Downeast Salmon Federation, Department of Marine Resources, the Nature Conservancy, and the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. And that leads us to today, to 2022, the third year of this coastwide survey. So why is community service, excuse me, we've recently changed the terminology from citizen science to community science, and I'm still wrapping my tongue around it. So why is community science so important to this effort? And it's really because we have a huge coastline here in Maine. If you stretched it out, it would be longer than the coastline of California. And along that coastline, we have approximately 300 streams where smelt do or have spawned that we would like to survey. So with your help, we can survey many more streams on an annual basis than we would be able to as just a handful of biologists heading up and down this nearly 3,500-mile coastline. We have two primary goals of our survey: a science goal, which is to conduct a long-term, scientifically rigorous coast-wide survey to identify smelt spawning presence and absence in Maine. And then our participant goal is to connect you to the sea-run smelts in our tidal streams, the science of monitoring smelt spawning, and to each other as essential partners in habitat stewardship. Data itself that you collect will be archived in DMR's Marvin database, and it will be shared with partners. So shared with our other biologists at DMR, our partners at DSF and TNC, as well as other partners in the sea-run fish research and restoration community. The data will be used for helping us to identify any undocumented runs. We will use it to prioritize streams for restoration, for example, translocating smelt for restoring populations or removing culverts. The image that you see here on the right is a very large, very dense egg bed in a stream in Downeast, Maine, where some restoration work was completed. An old Highway 1 bridge had basically fallen into the stream and was blocking smelt. Once that bridge was removed, the smelt came back almost immediately, and this photo is taken, I believe, the year after the restoration project. So we do have a really great ability to help restore these fish in areas where they may have been blocked from access for many years in a very quick manner. At this point, the data will not be used for changing any fisheries regulations, but it may help us prioritize what types of research we need to do in the future. The next key question is, when should you go out looking for smelt? And again, it depends on your location along the coastline. We consider the survey period itself to be from March 15th to June 15th. So from Penobscot Bay to points west, we're looking at the period from March to early May. So for those of you who are basically located from the New Hampshire border all the way across Penobscot Bay, basically to Brooklyn, we are hoping that you'll start surveying sometime around March 15th. Weather permitting, we do know that we are prone to very strong, heavy snowstorms in the middle of March. So we expect, the best time to start surveying would be sometime between mid-March to the end of March. If you are here and you're east of Penobscot Bay, we will have another training on March 30th, but your timing will be kind of April to early to mid-June. The spawning runs can be very short. They may last 10 days to 3 weeks, but in areas where smelts are not abundant, they may be even shorter, only a few days. So visiting your stream is very important. It's very important to visit your stream on a regular basis. And if you can, once per week is ideal. Once every other week is also okay. And what we're really looking for is for volunteers to take on 1 or 2 streams that you visit every week or every other week for the duration of the expected spawning season. So let's say you're in Brunswick and you start surveying on March 20th, we'd love for you to survey probably through into early May. So where are you going? What makes good smelt spawning habitat? Well, what you're looking for is, so a good smelt spawning habitat will have natural riparian areas, so trees that trap sediment and filter pollutants and excess nutrients. Those trees will shade the water, keeping it cool and also limiting algae growth. And that's important because algae can suffocate the eggs. A good spawning stream will have cobble and boulder substrate that those sticky eggs can settle onto and adhere to. There will be swift flowing riffles that oxygenate the water and attract the adults. And then interspersed with very small pools where the adults can rest. Another important question is, how do I find a survey site? Well, we have a map of the coastline, and we have a bunch of streams bookmarked where we'd love to get volunteers. We'd also love to know where you want to survey. Is there a stream in your neighborhood or your town, or even in your backyard, that you visit on a regular basis or are really interested in? Then we'd love to have you survey that stream. If you don't, and you need us to connect you with a stream, we are perfectly happy to help you find a stream that's close to you that you can survey. To participate in the survey, there are a few required materials. The first is a way to record data, and that's our printed data sheets, which you would receive copies of after this training. A digital camera, and your cell phone camera is fine. If you have an underwater camera, that's great. You will also need a flashlight or a headlamp with spare batteries. Trust me, we've all been out in the field and realized that our equipment doesn't work because we forgot the batteries. So definitely recommend a spare set of batteries. And then you'll need either a computer or a smartphone to submit the data, because the data is transmitted to us through an online data portal that Riley will talk about in a little bit. Now, when in doing fieldwork, safety is always first. So we ask you to use common sense when you're working around dark roads and on stream banks. Please do your fieldwork with a partner, especially at night, and choose sites that are easily accessible for your own abilities. And that's because you can expect slippery, uneven, and mucky footing along the stream banks. So when you're out there, it's a good idea to stay low and to wear boots or shoes that have really good traction. Please do not walk in the streams themselves. That can disturb the fish and the eggs. And of course, especially once we get into May, be prepared for those biting insects and do your tick checks afterwards. You also want to watch out for poison ivy along the stream banks. We also ask that you're respectful of the stream and other people, recognizing that there may be multiple uses occurring at these streams. For example, if you're in zone 2 or 3, there might be people out at night fishing for smelt. So we ask you to be respectful of anyone fishing for smelt or using the stream in any other way. You may need to you may need to pass through private land to get there. So if you need to do that, we would ask you to contact the landowner and make sure that you have permission to go through that property. And that's another thing that you can reach out to us for a little bit of help with. I wish I didn't have to say this in 2022, but if you're working in pairs, please follow current COVID guidelines. And then again, one of our key reminders is to please not step in the stream or otherwise disturb the environment itself. So now we're going to go to a live demo of the paper data sheet. So I am going to attempt to move my screen around here and pull up a copy of the paper data sheet. We have two versions of the data sheet. One has protocols, one does not. This is the version with the protocols. So any fields that are marked with an asterisk are required. So the very first thing that you're going to record when you get to your site is where you are. Where are you in space and time? So what is the date and what is the GPS location? If you have a GPS, that's great, but all of our smartphones have a GPS installed in them. You can use that as well. Again, if that's something you need a hand finding, we're happy to help you figure out how to do that with your phone. You'll also record your study time. And then note whether you were on public or private land. What was the weather? Was it clear, cloudy? Was there some kind of precipitation? Or was it hazy or foggy? And then you'll also record the tide phase, whether it was low, middle, or high. And then you can look up the tide for your local location or close to where you are using one of many websites. We've listed one here, which is US Harbors for Maine. The next thing you're going to record are whether or not they're eggs. So this is, sorry, backing up, I should have mentioned there are two separate protocols, one for daytime and one for nighttime. The focus of our daytime observations are looking for smelt eggs. The focus of the nighttime observations is looking for the actual spawning adults themselves. So eggs could be either live or dead. Live smelt eggs are clear, they're translucent in color, they're very, very small. You can get each one of these little dots on this rock here is a smelt egg, so you can see just how tiny they are. And if they're dead, those eggs will be white and opaque. And so if you are doing a daytime survey for eggs and you find eggs, you'll record approximately how big it was, length and width. And you'll record an estimated number. And if we scroll down in our protocol, you'll see that 1 square foot of eggs, 1 layer deep and just touching, holds on the order of 60,000 to 70,000 eggs. The eggs are more widely spaced, there are fewer per square foot. So you really want to give your best estimate. Here's an example of those dead eggs. They're white and opaque. You also then indicate whether the eggs are alive or dead. They're either all alive, they're mostly dead, or they're all dead. Next thing to record is whether there's algae on the eggs. If you see green algae on them, mark yes. Then do you see anybody eating those eggs? Are there any predators out there eating those eggs? And if so, who's eating them? Now, actually, I'm going to go back up. One of the options under the number of eggs is we did not survey during the day. If you're out at night, I'd like you to check this box as we did not survey during the day. That gives us our quality check to know you actually were doing that you actually went out looking for smelts, and the reason you didn't note that you didn't see eggs was because you were looking for something else and not that there weren't eggs there. The eggs can be really hard to see at night. So the focus of the nighttime observations is to look for smelt. So what you're going to do for a nighttime survey is you're going to walk down to the stream bed with your buddy and a flashlight after sunset. You're going to let your eyes adjust for about 5 minutes while you stand on the stream bank watching for fish. You're going to stand in one place. And you're periodically going to take your flashlight and shine it over the stream to see the smelt. But smelt hate light. They like dark. There's a lot of things that eat them, birds, otters, minks, seals, all things that find them by seeing them. So they really like really dark conditions. So if you continually shine your light, they're going to go away. They're going to think you're going to expose them to predators. So when you're ready, you'll set a timer for 1 minute and you're going to count or estimate how many fish are going upstream. So the estimate should be in the tens, hundreds, thousands, or 10,000s. And then you indicate how many there were. And again, if you're doing a daytime survey, you would select the option, we did not survey at night. Once you have recorded your egg or smelt observations, you will record your stream conditions. Remember, don't go in the stream. What you're going to do is you're going to estimate the water depth in feet. And then you're going to record what's going on the adjacent land. Is it a wetland? Is it forested? Is it developed? Are there houses on one side? Is there an agricultural field on one side? And then what is the substrate? And this is where I get to pull out my props. So the different substrates you're going to look for are boulders. Now I don't have a basketball, but this is a similar size. So we're looking, so this is 10.1 inches or bigger than a basketball is a boulder. Cobbles are 2.5 inches to about 10.1 inches. So these are kind of larger cobbles. Gravel could be anywhere between the size of a peppercorn. You can see that between my fingers there. And a couple inches, about 2.5 inches. So this is my driveway gravel. Sand is going to be anywhere from the size of a peppercorn down to about the size of a grain of salt. And then silt and clay will be finer than salt. One way to know it's silt is if you were to pick it up and rub it between your fingers, silt or clay will stick to your fingers and leave a residue. Sand will just kind of brush away. You may also see aquatic vegetation, which you could record as a substrate. We give you a chance to record 3 different substrate sizes: primary, so what's the most common; secondary, what's the second most common; and then tertiary, which would be the 3rd most common. To be honest, I usually only record the primary and secondary because it can often be very difficult to determine what's secondary and what's tertiary. And if I'm really in doubt, I'll only write down the primary. The primary one is the one that we really need. If you can't figure out the secondary and the tertiary, that's fine. Next thing you're going to record is the canopy cover. So this is how much of your view of the sky is blocked by branches. And one way to do that is to look straight up and imagine a line down the middle of your view. You can use your imagination to move all those branches to one side and how much of the free space would remain. If all the branches didn't fit into the one side, imagine a second line dividing that has some branches and sky. And then determine whether the branches fill more or less than half of that space. And so what you're looking for is it 0 to 25%? So if you imagine a square and you filled one quadrant, you moved all the trees and they're only in one quadrant, that would be 0 to 25%. If they're in kind of 2 quadrants, that's 26 to 50. If they were to fill 3, it would be 51 to 75. And then our last category is 76 to 100%. Next thing we'll record is if there are any obstructions that would keep smelt from moving upstream. And this could be something natural, like a beaver dam or a natural falls, or it could be something man-made, like a culvert, a dam, or a roadbed. We'll also ask you to record whether there's easy public access to the stream. And you can think about that if you could take, say, a 2 or 3-year-old child or an elderly person down to the stream, the answer would be yes. If not, then it's probably no. You'll also record if anyone is fishing, and if yes, you'd indicate how many people are fishing with gear. The final thing that you'll do is to take a photograph of what you saw, and this is where the camera comes into play. So the photographs help us with quality checking the data and can also help us document things in place and time. So your one mandatory photograph is a photo of the stream bed taken looking across the stream. So let's imagine that I am standing looking across the stream. I'm standing right at the stream bed looking across. I'm going to pick up my phone or my camera and I'm going to take a photograph straight on that shows me the entire width of the stream. I have a few examples of that coming up. Water temperature is optional. If you have a thermometer, that's great. If you don't, worry about it. You can note anything that interesting or that have interfered with your observations. For example, was there anything that made it hard to see into the stream? Was there anything unusual? We'd like you to keep this short, 10 words or less if possible. But if there's something you need to convey that's longer than that, or if other questions, you can always shoot me an email directly. The final and important thing is to, while you're at the stream, go back and make sure you filled up all of the fields of the data and check that you followed the protocols and checked your work, because it's not a lot of fun when you get home to enter the data and realize that you've forgotten to fill out a field. But just in case, we really want you to enter the data as soon as possible within the next few days. Ideally the next day if you're doing a nighttime survey, or that same day if you're doing a daytime survey, just in case you did forget to write down a field, you'll still have it fresh in your mind. If you wait for a couple of weeks or until the end of the season, you'll have forgotten. Trust me, I'm a field biologist, I've done it. Any mistake you might make in the field, I'm sure that I've already done. The other thing, it is also, I download the data periodically during the season, and that helps me quality check in season and make sure that the data is coming in properly. I can reach out to you if I notice that there might be something wonky with your data that we can correct in season. All right, so with that, I'll pause for a minute, check my time, and go back to presentation. Okay. So let's see, make sure I'm on the right slide here. Okay, now it's time for a pop quiz. So we talked about the different substrate types. I would like you to take a minute and look at the stream here, this photo. This would not be a good photograph to go with your data because this is looking up the stream, not across. If you were looking across the stream, you'd be standing right here. Can you see my cursor? Taking a photo across to the other side. It's a good illustration of stream substrate. So I'd like you to take a look at the photograph and in the chat, pop in what you think the substrate is. What is the primary substrate and the secondary substrate? I see a cobble coming in for a primary cobble. Another primary cobble. You guys are correct. The primary substrate is cobble. And yeah, cobble, silt or sand for the secondary, maybe gravel for the secondary. Cobble or silt. It's, as you can see, it is hard to try to decide what that secondary and tertiary are, especially from a photograph. I think it's probably sand looking at this, but it's hard to tell. It could be gravel, it could be sand. In this case, I might actually only record the primary as cobble. Let's see, I think I need to minimize the chat to go to my next. There we go. All right, let's look at canopy. So here are two different images. On the left, we're looking at almost 100% canopy cover. On the right, what do you think we're looking at on the right there? %. I think that would be right about 50%. So I might, yeah, 26 to 50 or 51 to 75 would probably be okay because I think we really are looking right about 50% there. How about the overhead canopy cover in this one? Zero, zero, zero. Yep, absolutely zero. So that'd be 0 to 25 selection. How about this one? Because we're looking at stream level, it's kind of hard to tell, but this one actually is, yeah, 76 to, exactly, hard to tell without looking up. Absolutely, but yeah, 76 to 100%. So how about obstructions to fish passage? What do we have on the left here? Roadbed, yep. How about on the right? Beaver dam, absolutely. All right, what about this one? We have not one, but 3 culverts. One that maybe fish can get through, one that's probably can't, and one culvert up here on the right that's doing absolutely no good for fish right now. And this one? Yeah, this is a dam. How about this one? So this would be natural debris. This would probably, it's hard to tell from the angle if fish could maybe get through there or not. This is a, yeah, I think there is probably a hole there, but this is woody debris. And this is completely natural. Woody debris does belong in our streams. And so it's something we don't want to, we want to note that it's there, but please don't remove it. So let's look at few images of what we're looking for in addition to the habitat. So this is an image again of smelt eggs. These ones up here high on all of these little specks are smelt eggs. And you can see that if there are very few eggs, they can be really hard to find. One good way to look for them is to actually look for the dead eggs that might be above the water, because those are going to be white and easier to see. And if you start seeing dead eggs, then it's a good indication that they're live eggs that you can look more closely for. And here are the adult smelt, which again are the goal of our nighttime surveys. Here's another image of dead eggs. So these would be up on the stream bank. And if you walk down to the stream bank and saw this, you'd say, wow, there were probably a lot of smelt here. And that's where you'd start to look more carefully into the stream itself. You may also see dead smelt. So this is a dead smelt here. You can see its belly's up. That's a little bit easier to see than all of these live smelt that are kind of rushing up this falls here. So let's talk about photos. So your mandatory photos, the one of the stream bed. If there are other interesting things you might want to take photos of, you can do that as well. You can upload up to 4 photos, and those additional photos could be things like obstructions, so a perched culvert or a debris jam like the one we saw. It could be predators eating smelts, or pictures of the eggs or smelt themselves. This is an example of not a great photo, and I will recognize it is really hard to take photographs at night. One thing you can do is take your camera or your phone and hold your flashlight up on top of it to take a photograph. That does help a little bit. And we do recognize that the nighttime photos are going to be very challenging, but we do still ask you to take them. This is a better example of a nighttime photo looking across the stream, and you can kind of get a sense of what the stream bed in there looks like. It looks like there's some cobbles, probably as primary substrate. So that covers the protocol itself. I am going to turn this over to Riley now to talk about what you're going to do after the survey, because once you've collected the data on your paper data sheet, we need you to get it to us. And this is what you're going to do to get it to us. I will stop sharing my screen. And while Riley's pulling up her screen, Sarah, do we have a question that we may want to address?
Yeah, there were 2 questions. I'm going to answer this last question in the chat, but I did have 2 questions I pulled out that I figured you could answer really quickly. One is, when do smelt spawn compared to other sea run species? We've got a number of questions about that, like alewives, elvers, etc. And then the second question was, how far above or below the head of tide should people be looking, especially above the head of tide?
Great questions. The first one is, they are the first fish of spring, so they're the first fish to start spawning. And depending on where you are along the coastline, their spawning time might overlap with alewives. So if you're looking for smelt in, say, mid-coast Maine, you will be, looking in April, and the alewives may already be starting to run. They are the earliest, but as you move along the coast, they'll start to overlap more. We did see them still spawning during the elver fishing season, so they will overlap with elvers as well. And the other question was also a really good one. Oh, head of tide. Depends on where you are. About maybe not so far upstream. They're not powerful swimmers, so 100, 200, maybe 300 yards upstream. They will spawn downstream of head of tide if they can't get above it. So you might see them within 50 to 100 yards downstream of the head of tide as well. So one of the ways to do the survey, especially for the eggs, is to walk down to the stream bank and walk along it in an upstream direction, 200 yards or so, stopping periodically to look in the stream, and then do the same thing going downstream of the head of tide around 50 to 100 yards or so. Are you ready now, Riley? Great.
Yep,
Go
I
ahead,
just
take it
figured
over.
I would give you the screen time while you're answering the questions. Okay. Okay, can everybody see? I showed you the wrong screen first. Can you see the screen? Is everything good?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Riley. I work at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, and we started working with this project a couple of years ago with TNC and DMR around the time that we made a big evolution to our Citizen Science Now community science program. So if you're familiar with GMRI, we've had a long-running educational citizen science program with classrooms where the students could go out and do very specifically designed protocols around scientific questions and collect data and submit it to different scientists around the state who were interested in invasive species and some other questions. And so we wanted to include a mechanism to allow kind of broader engagement with the public and kind of really open these projects up to individuals who wanted to contribute and participate in some of these projects. And so that's where we sort of began working on the integration of some of these sea-run fish and different programs that TNC and DMR and Downeast Salmon Federation are working on. So all that to say, we have built a platform that's now been up and running for about 3 years, and it's known as the Ecosystem Investigation Network, and you can find it at the URL that you see there, investigate.gmri.com. gmri.org. And I think as part of your packet, that link will be in there for you. It's pretty straightforward platform. We need you to register so that we can collect data from you. So it's as simple as exchanging your email address with us and filling out a couple of fields that I'll walk you through. When you get to the website, you can browse around. There's lots of information about the program. We do have collection of projects, some help, FAQs and things like that. And just to quickly orient you to how to find the Smelt project, under our menu here for projects, you're going to go to the public projects where you'll see a collection of things. And the one you're interested in for this program is the Smelt spawning. Clicking on that will sort of take you to kind of the home page where everything happens for Smelt. So this is where we're going to basically cover all that great information that Danielle just gave you, only here it is for you to read again. There's lots of interesting links and documents and things like that to browse through once you get here. So getting into the system is just, again, like I said, it's pretty straightforward, but we know there's a couple of places where it's helpful to have somebody walk through it with you and kind of address kind of some common issues. And of course, the little Zoom thing is right exactly where I need to click. So up here in the right corner, your options are log in and register. And so for those of you who are joining us for the second or maybe third season, you may be going straight to log in, but for everyone else, I'll quickly cover register. So what we're asking of you is kind of the same as you'll see on most sites. We just need a username. It's going to tell you if it's available before you submit. So username, email, and password. And first and last name is helpful to us, although I believe it doesn't yell at you too much if you omit that, but do that, submit, and you have an account. You'll get an email that just asks you to confirm. So you've seen those before where you'll get an email from the site that says, please click this link to confirm that you did this and you want an account with us. Once you do that, you're all set. From there, you're going to want to go to login. And one little gotcha here for those people who have joined us before, we did make a pretty major upgrade to how our user management works last year. So it was in advance of the kind of first public seasons. I don't think it affected anybody in this group, but I just wanted to mention it. So if you had an account previous, you would need to reset your password. Everybody else, you can log in with the username and password that you just created in the previous step, and you should be good to go. So because live demos are always scary, I'm already logged in over here in a different browser so that just pretend I logged in, everything's good. So here we are sort of in the logged in view of the project. So now if I had gone, like I showed you before, to projects public, clicked on Smelt, here it would be. So as you sort of scroll through, you'll see that it's organized by tabs. So you have a kind of project overview to kind of revisit some of the background info. This section is I would recommend taking a read through. It covers a lot of the important information that Danielle hit. primarily around safety and what to bring and what to do and what not to do. You can access those protocols that you saw, the paper data sheet. So you can get another copy of them here. And, you know, again, tips and things like that for finding the target that you're looking for. Lots of good info. To add data, we are doing that through the tab called Contribute. And so sort of the biggest gotcha we've had is around people entering their location. And so I'll take some time to do that and show you the various things that are important to remember as you're setting your trip up. So we're going to ask you where you went and when you went first. And once you do that, then you're going to get to the data sheet. And that's just part of how the system works to kind of build the data sheet for you. So if you're going to add your study site where you did your sampling, there's two ways to do it. One is to, you know, zoom in. Let's just say you were here, and then this little icon here is the marker. So we click that and then drop it there, and you can see that it gave us a lat and long coordinate. You could also fill in these, and this is actually what we recommend, from the information you have on your phone, and just copy what the phone is telling you for where you did your sampling. If you don't fill anything in here, this is probably Danielle's biggest headache, and one of the things that's pretty easy to overlook. If you just click let's add some data, it's going to set a default coordinate, and we're going to know that you had omitted the coordinate data, and Danielle's going to have to follow up with you to clarify where exactly you went. So just going over this a bunch just to make sure that you're all kind of paying a lot of attention to making sure you've set your location here. So once you've done that, we're going to click the big button to add data, and you're essentially going to get the same data sheet that Danielle walked you through, only it's digital, and instead of checkboxes you have drop-down lists, but the same general idea that it's asterisks for where the field is required, and drop-down lists where we're asking you to choose from one of the options. So kind of with all good protocol, putting it on your paper sheet is first and foremost the best way to do it. You have a backup, you have something to reference, and then add it to the data sheet. If you rely entirely on your access to the data sheet while you're out in the field, you know, any number of things can happen. So we just recommend that you keep the data on the data sheet and then add it to the site version when you're ready to do it. And that will kind of give you a way to organize your notes and your photos and everything like that. So I think, Danielle, I'm passing it back to you to step through this detail or answer any questions that anybody has about getting registered.
Rather than switching us back over, do you want to just scroll through the data sheet, Riley, and I'll just step through the fields?
Absolutely, if that makes more sense.
Yeah, why don't we just do that? Okay. So most of these are drop-down menus. So Riley, if you could kind of just show us that the drop-downs. So you select the ones that you observed. And let's click on the one that's number of eggs, please, Riley. Scroll down and you'll see that the very bottom one is we did not survey during the day. So if you were doing a nighttime survey, that's where you would make sure to enter that box that says we did not survey during the day. That's another common one that makes it a challenge, that can hang you up when you're entering your data. If you did a nighttime survey and you don't fill that particular box in, it won't let you submit the data. So make sure that you've selected that box if you were doing a nighttime survey. And yeah, I think you can keep scrolling down, Riley. So we have, if you're doing the nighttime survey, we have the number of smelts. And if you could just pull down that drop down, you see those same categories that were on the paper data sheet, including we did not survey at night. So again, if you did the daytime survey, that's where you'd put that in so that you could properly submit your data. The next set of observations are the stream conditions. So what you'll see here is that there is actually a drop-down menu for each type of adjacent land. So you'll have to do the pull-down menu and say, let's say if there's no wetland for that one, you'd put no. Forested, yes. Maybe developed, let's also say it was a no. And then agriculture, let's make that one a no as well. So for each of those categories, you pull down the drop down and fill it in. And then this is the next down below here is where you'd put in your stream substrate. So if it's cobble, you're going to select the cobble. And again, only that primary substrate is mandatory. The other two fields are can be filled in if you're certain you know what that secondary and tertiary substrate are. Easy access to the stream, obstructions. So let's pull down the obstructions to fish passage. You'll see not recorded, culvert, dam, natural falls, beaver dam, road bed and ford, or none. In this one, where you might fill in a not recorded is if you're doing a nighttime survey and you don't see anything. So actually, this is a good one to stop on for a minute, because what we're looking for is what's where you are. If you're standing on the stream and you look upstream and you look downstream at that position, you don't see an obstruction, you'd say no, there's none. If you're there at night and you can't see very well, you might put not recorded. But if you know the stream really well and you know there's an obstruction 500 yards upstream, but you don't see it from where you're standing, select no, because from that position, that GPS location, you can't see that there's an obstruction. I think that's good for there. And then down here, this is where you would upload your photograph. So if you're doing the data entry on your phone and you took the photo on your phone, you could just upload it right from your pictures. If you're doing it on your computer, you would obviously put the photograph onto your computer and then upload it here. And then you have a chance to enter any field notes. And then we get down to the certification box. So once again, you'll scroll back up, read through your data sheet, make sure everything's all in there properly, and then you would check that certification box at the bottom that says, I certify that I followed the protocols and checked my work. And
Hey,
I
and
think,
was just going to say
Riley.
one last thing. So, you know, the asterisks are small, but they're there. And what's going to happen is anywhere there's an asterisk, the page knows it's looking for it to be something other than the default setting. So if I don't think I hit all the required fields, but if I hit submit, it's basically not going to go anywhere, and you're going to start to see these yellow boxes, and the yellow boxes should tell you what you missed. So we do get some folks that have said they can't submit their data sheet, it's just not going through, and a lot of the time it's because they forgot a field or they didn't change it from the default setting, and they need to go back and do that. So just, again, they become kind of white noise when you've been looking at a data sheet for a while, but that's what you're looking for, are these sort of warning fields to tell you what you had forgotten.
And I did see one question pop into the chat, so I'll go ahead and answer it. The forms themselves are cell phone friendly, so you can enter it on a cell phone. We do recommend that you use the paper data sheets in the field. We have lousy cell coverage. I think I heard Maine has the worst broadband in the country, right? So even if you're, I surveyed a stream right near Brunswick last year and no coverage, I could not enter my data. So that's why we ask you to take the paper data sheet. It's there too. It's always there. You've got that paper data sheet. You can go back to it and refer to it. You can even send it to us. It's a permanent record when you've got that paper data sheet. Just in case something happens with your phone, you're trying to enter the data and it won't submit. And yep.
Yeah, and just one more quick thing while we're here. So you've been out in the field, you've submitted your data sheet, and maybe you made a mistake or you want to go back and update something, or you didn't finish it. Whatever reason, you've kind of got that data in the system, but you want to go back and make a change to it or correct something that maybe Danielle noted in the quality control. Once you're logged in, you'll see your name up here, or your username, or whatever your first name, I think, in the field. You're looking for a user profile, which is going to take you to a list of the sampling that you've done. So I have a lot because I do a lot of testing, but the most recent one will be at the bottom. So this is the one I did earlier. And if you click on that, you get the information that you put in the data sheet, and you can get in to edit any of the information you added. So this basically pulls the data sheet back up for you and you can make those changes. Editing trip details gets us to, the only thing we can fix there is the date and the location. And it, like I said before, the location is a very commonly just missed in the moment kind of a thing, because it does let you submit with the default value. So that's editing trip would let you go in and fix your coordinates or the date if that was what was wrong with it, or you can go here and make any changes to the data that you've entered.
So Riley, if you want to let me drive again, I'll put us back into presentation. I have one kind of couple last things to cover. All right. So after this training, we have your email addresses because you registered for the training, and we will send out an email probably at the beginning of next week once this recording has been edited and is in a hyperlink form that we can send the link for. You'll receive an email from us that has the link to the training video, so you can go back and watch any part of it that you want to. It will have a link to this 2022 Spawning Smelt Survey participation Google form. I ask that you fill this out because this kind of is basically your commitment to the survey. This tells me that you're actually going to participate in the survey, and that it gives you a chance to answer questions like where you are, whether you want help finding a survey stream, how far, what town you might want to survey in. And that tells me that I need to link up with you and help you find a stream in your local area. And it also gives you a field to indicate whether you'd like to be connected with any other volunteers in your area, so that you might want, in case you're looking for a survey partner, to go out and do the surveys with. So I think with that, I'd like to go to the acknowledgements. There are a lot of folks who have helped us to put the survey together. And I want to acknowledge them all. And I think it looks like we have just about 8 minutes for questions. We are going to stop promptly at 5 because I want to be respectful of all of your time and make sure this recording is no longer than an hour for the folks who weren't able to join us in person. A few other things, I will be doing periodic lunchtime question and answer sessions via Microsoft Teams, so you'll also receive invitations for those, so you can pop in and ask any questions you have in season. And if you have questions that we didn't get to answer tonight, you have my email address. Please feel free to reach out. I want to make sure we get all your questions answered, but also that we let everybody go promptly at 5. So I guess with that, Sarah, can I turn it over to you for questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So one question I was just in the middle of answering is folks need to wait to find out what streams they're supposed to survey. So what if, say I need to find streams in the Augusta area, what do I do, Danielle?
If you need to find streams in the Augusta area and you don't know what they are, you can send me an email and I'll look at the list that I have and give you a few options, and you can choose one, and I'll mark that down on my list as you're surveying that stream, and that other streams in the Augusta area might still be open.
I was able to answer most of the other questions in the chat. So if folks have additional questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand and Danielle can call on you, or you can certainly keep typing questions in the chat. That will be saved with the recording of this. So we'll have them to look back on to like improve other trainings and have our frequently asked questions. So please do continue to ask questions.
And I'll note there is also in the one of the tabs in the GMRI Smelt spawning landing page is called discourse, and or discussion. If you go to that, there are some frequently asked questions and answers in there. There is also the opportunity to pose a question there, and we do try to do our best to answer those in season.
I'll show that real quick while people are thinking of their questions.
Great, thank you, Riley.
So thank you, Danielle. I totally forgot about that, even though it was in my notes. So if you're back on the page, again, you've got the tabs we walked through. Discussion is the one that Danielle was talking about. So if you click on that, you get quick links to this discussion forum. Once you're logged in, you can actually get in and view and contribute. So if you're not logged in, it's going to ask you to log in here. But if you click on project discussion, you'll get to this discourse forum, and you can see there's some threads here, questions about observations. And again, these will update as the season begins. And a lot of work went into sort of answering some FAQs and kind of putting commonly asked questions in there and making sure there were some resources. So that is available to you.
Yeah, and under that questions about observations and data, there's really good information on how to find the head of tide, how to find tide charts, what head of tide looks like, things like that. So it really is a great reference to look at if you've got a question. Do we have any questions? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I'm just not, I couldn't really follow in the chat about the time of day. Is it possible to do a mix of day and night, or do you want consistently one and it's okay to mix in some of the others?
You can absolutely do day and night. I think I've had folks who've done both, where they'll go out at night and then a few days later go out during the day. You may also want to go, if you go out and you see smelt on one night, going back a day or two later to look for eggs is great. I actually did the opposite. I found some dead smelt that had been clearly eaten by somebody on a daytime egg survey. So I went out the next night to see if I could see smelt coming in. So a mix of day and nighttime surveys is absolutely fine.
And Danielle, to expand on that a little bit more, do you want people to go to the same site every single time, or do you want them to go to a variety of sites?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, this is something I really want to make sure to clarify. It is far more important for us to have you go to the same site every single time during the spawning season than to go to a whole bunch of sites once. Just going to a whole bunch of sites once doesn't really tell us anything, because the smelt spawning runs, they're kind of unpredictable, and you might completely miss it if you go to each site, go to 6 sites once. But if you go to that same 1 or 2 sites every week or every other week through the spawning season, that's the time series data that we're looking for a couple reasons. One, you're more likely to see it, especially if it's a low abundance run. You're more likely to see smelt or eggs if you go back consistently. Also, the timing can change from year to year based on temperature. We might have a really late spring or really early spring, and they might come in earlier or later. And that's the type of thing we really want to keep track of with a warming Gulf of Maine. It also can be different based on where you are. So for example, my colleague was surveying down in the Damerscotta area last year, and the smelt were done running before they even started in the stream that I was surveying in Brunswick. And that might be because that one has a really high kind of natural ledge that the fish need the highest high tide to get in on. So they couldn't get in until that high tide got them there. Things like rain events. Last year we had a really rainy spring. The water was really turbid. The discharge, the river flow was really high, and that seemed to delay the smelt as well. So really the key thing for us, the best way to get the best quality data that we're looking for, is for you to take that 1 or 2 streams and just go back consistently. As kind of to think of it as adopting your own stream and really, taking adopting your stream, really. Maybe I'll go back and just pull a couple of the questions. Oh, actually, no, I see it's 5 o'clock exactly. So that does take us to the end of our time. I want to thank you all for coming and joining us. Thank you, Riley, for introducing the GMRI platform, and Sarah for manning the questions. I look forward to connecting with all of you during the season. I hope that you're excited and want to join us and collect some smelt data this spring. So keep an eye out for an email from me next week, and happy soon to be spring.